Yeah, I think very good.
Oh no.
Go on.
Right. Can't tell if it's coming through on the stream or not.
Mute that, Tom.
You what?
Mute that real quick.
And business rates reset. This report is deliberately silent on the decision about council tax and therefore provides members of the committee an opportunity to test the assumptions in the budget and MTFS. We are also awaiting detail from our district and borough councils on tax base and collection of funds year-end positions. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Councillor Matthews. Can I ask the now Justice 151 officer?
Detail from.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was only going to add a few bits of additional information. I'm grateful for Councillor Matthews' introduction. As he quite rightly says, this is the story of the development of the budget. As we've already been to Overview Committee in November, which took it to a certain point, and since then, a significant change has been around the local government finance settlement, which has been rather complex this year. A significant amount of changes, and as we've already been needs formula. And although there's been additional government granting, what we have to remember is that some authorities have seen an increase in grant, but that reflects the increased need for those authorities that in the past you could argue have not been recognised through central government in terms of the funding for them. But as a consequence of just redistributing money, it means some authorities are also losing money. That in itself adds strain across the whole of local authorities. And consequently, the government did introduce floors to try and limit the amount of distance that some authorities would go down. But introducing floors, of course, will limit the amount of those authorities that should be gaining additional funding to meet their needs will be limited. And unfortunately for us, at the end of 28-29, those floors and ceilings will be fixed. Pretty similar to the last time that the government reviewed the relative needs for them. As I said, as a consequence of that, you'll see additional funding for the local government of about 78 million over the 3 years, but there's a transition period, so that means that it will come to us gradually over the next 3 years. Even saying that, that's additional funding next year of £32 million will come to us directly by additional government grant and through the business rates redistribution. And that, I think, was all because I think I was just open for questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Joe. Can I ask the committee to move the recommendations? Oh, sorry, I'm moving the recommendations. To accept the recommendations and seek a seconder on page 31 of the agenda.
No, sir.
And I'd like to now open the floor to debate, if anybody would like to ask questions of our officers there. Seek a seconder. Best way.
Thank you. Apologies for my voice, it's a bit croaky. Thank you for your report, Councillor Matthews. Just a few questions, if I may. The savings that you mentioned over the MTFS of 44.2 million, I think 18 million is for next year. Are you investing more in these areas over and above what was already in the MTFS in order to achieve the savings that you've reported? Or are you relying on the effects of the programmes already started under the previous administration? That's my first question.
To be honest, I'll ask, there's colleagues here from executive directors also who want to know a bit more detail in terms of those programmes themselves. But you remember the transformation, and this is what most of those activities are around, which is about transformation, takes a period of time. So some of that work would have started under the previous administration, Stuart. Actually, in quantifying the value of the output of those changes has happened under this administration.
So just to be clear, we're not talking about investing any more money in prevention in order to achieve those savings. What I mean by prevention as an example would be, for example, in adult social care. It could be an investment in making sure that some adults manage to stay in their own home longer, and therefore they don't need the residential care that can be quite expensive.
Well, would it be easier for us to ask the executive directors, particularly in terms of adults and children, as an example, where that prevention work and investment is?
Yeah, I know there is money going into that, but is any more money going into it for the MTFS?
The top answer is yes. But I think if you go into the details from the executive directors, they'll be able to explain why and where that is.
I know why, I know why. I'm completely happy with why. It's, are we putting more money in, or is it the same money that was in the MTFS, and we're just relying on the programme going through its process in order to make savings?
No, there will be additional investments included in that. Yeah, and as always, there's additional investment in that across the services themselves. So you'll see that I think the total investment is 138 million in terms of our frontline services. So next year will be an increase, which is to meet the needs as well as to work on the preventative measures that will do the transformation.
Okay, thank you. Second one, I think it's paragraph 46, the assumed wage inflation post 27-28 at 2%. What will wage inflation have, what effect will wage inflation have if that increases to say 3.5%? How will that affect your projected savings? Councillor Matthews.
Again, I suppose it's a technical question. I think it's easy for me to answer.
I'm not sure it's a technical question, it's a mathematical question.
The answer is actually in the document itself, as you know, Councillor Bestwick. An increase of 1% adds 2.4 million to the wage bill. So going from the current assumption of 2 to 3, we'll add 2.4. You were being rather sneaky in terms of trying to make that 3.5.
Well, that's sneaky.
Yeah. It's just, you split the difference and say it adds another £1 million on top of that.
Yeah, the point of the question is to make everybody aware that we've only put in the programme that we've assumed 2% wage inflation, so therefore I'm making everybody aware that it's likely to be more than 2%, and so that's going to be a challenge to keep those savings.
And I think that is a good point to make, and I think it's something that we will probably have to reflect as we construct the budget going forward. So you're absolutely right. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, as you're now reflecting on that, my next point.
Can we sort of like alternate instead of doing 3 separate?
Sorry?
Is it a build-on point, or sort of like because you've gone from one thing to another?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Do apologise. Because you've gone from one thing onto a different section. Is this a different section?
Yeah.
Hang on a minute then, because there's others want to come in.
Oh, sorry.
Following on from what you said in the first place.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I will come back to you. Councillor Cox.
Good morning. Thank you for the report. I just want to go back to the MTFS somewhat. The governance arrangements are in place to track the delivery of the savings and identify slippage early. What governance is in place to identify any slippage?
That process is being developed for Cabinet because we're just trying to do this in stages in terms of understanding what those are, because they've got to be approved first in terms of those programmes. But inevitably there'll be oversight by Cabinet. My anticipation, of course, that the overview would also want to play a part in terms of the oversight of that delivery. So at some point we'll have to see how that mechanism, but we'll come back to the executive with some plans in terms of how that mechanism for the detail that is in terms of the oversight. Remember, some of those savings plans are specific in adult social care or children's social care, so we might want to make sure that the relevant scrutiny role a committee plays their part in the oversight of specific programmes, but the overall programme itself should come to a...
Okay, thank you. And sort of lead on from that then, have we had any contingencies built in, contingency buffers built in to cover the risk that some of these savings are delayed or not fully realised?
Yeah. A good question, and that's why at paragraph 67 we identify that actually there are some options to be considered, and overview committee might suggest either a percentage, or the fact is that just the Cabinet ought to take that into consideration when they're setting their budget, that it is experience for other authorities in terms of an ambitious savings plan that some of these may not be achieved, and therefore we need to make sure they are. There's an element of risk of non-delivery that ought to be considered when setting the budget.
Thank you.
I'll go back to Councillor Bestwick first, because I did. Sorry, Councillor Bestwick, I'll come back to you now.
Thank you. Yeah, my thought has been slightly stolen, but that's fine. I was going to refer to paragraph 67. Will the Cabinet be considering putting in some of the mitigation recommended in table 4 to mitigate the risk of not delivering 100% of the savings?
Yeah, the cabinet will consider some mitigations into that at the cabinet meeting. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, not 100%. So. Don't repeat me on that.
You have records now.
You know, for obvious reasons. You know, it's a brand new idea and a brand new way forward. So it will be wise, as we spoke with Nigel, to put some mitigation in there. Correct.
Thank you, Chair. Keeping in line with the main risks, on page 8, it highlights, the report highlights key risks, economic risk, funding, etc. How are the wider factors such as inflation, energy prices, national economic uncertainty reflected in the financial risk assessment? Yes.
Again, good question. And the way that we balance some of those risks, and again, they're interlinked, as quite rightly as you say, Councillor Brown, some of those inflation impacts are because of global events. That's what our experience has been in the past. We'll manage that risk through the size or the assessment for general fund balance, which you would call free reserves. We did that previous years in terms of the way that we do that, in terms of we go through every single risk that we think could impact on us and the likelihood and the impact, and that determines what the size of the general fund balance, and therefore that's the value of the risk that we're holding.
Thank you. The general fund, is it your responsibility to decide the level? And if so, is it appropriate?
Yeah. Again, I know what you mean. Yeah, it is the 151 officer's assessment for the level of risk and the level of the general fund balance. That forms part of my statement on the accounts. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Smith, did you?
I think.
Sorry, Councillor Bestwick again.
Sorry, Neil. Sorry. I think the Section 151 officers already alluded to the £78 million worth of extra income, if I can call it that, from central government over 3 years. Quite a bit of that is due to the business rates set by central government. I know both you and I, Councillor Matthews, are businessmen or ex-businessmen, so we know the pain that could cause, particularly SMEs and people in the retail and leisure sector. Is there any plan in your budget or from Cabinet to provide any financial assistance to those businesses in Nottinghamshire in any form?
Again, although they may come up with sort of what they thought the ideas are, technically it's not our responsibility in terms of provide assistance to businesses. That comes from the billing authorities and from central government.
I realise that. It was just a question. So no, he's going to say that.
You know, I'll answer that. You know, as a question as a businessman as well. You know, we all understand that. We read and we see the television, a real concern about small businesses. But the government control the levers and all this sort of thing, that we're all well aware. And I think to try and put the emphasis onto the local councils at this time is a bit difficult thing to do, Stuart. But as a cabinet and as an authority, we will do our best for, you know, at all times for everybody in business and taxpayers. That's what we're here for. You know, so if we get some magic money, we'll help anybody. Thank you.
Councillor Cox.
Yes, thank you. So, looking at what we've got on paperwork here, have the priorities of the council plan being used to how the priorities of the council plan being used for funding is protected or targeted for the 26-27 budget?
Yeah. It's flashing green now. Sorry, could you repeat it again?
Yeah, so how have the priorities in the council's plan being used to decide where funding is protected or targeted for the 26-27 budget?
Well, our responsibilities are always for, adult social care and children and families. That's our priority all the way through. We want to prioritise libraries and youth centres. So we think our budget prioritise everything. We're quite confident in what we prioritise. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got two questions, if I'm okay to do them both at the same time, or I'll follow your lead, whichever. Just on mitigations, if I may, paragraph 67 makes absolutely clear that reasons for in-year overspends, Councillor Matthews, is down to non-achievement of savings, and I think 42 or 45 million is probably the biggest saving regime this council has seen, and I genuinely hope you achieve it, but I highly doubt you'll get to 100%. Just reflecting on what the LGA said to us about capacity, that we have a director for public service reform, and hopefully we'll be able to co-answer this question with yourself. How confident are you, as a cabinet member overseeing the budget, that there's enough resources in Lucy's team to be able to carry out the savings cross-departmental work there? Because LGR, from my experience when I was the leader of the council, Lucy and colleagues would be up to their eyeballs in LGR work and not necessarily being able to fulfil the other 90% of what we would need for these savings to come to fruition across departments. And that's no criticism of the quality of our staff, it's just the fact that resources aren't there to enable that to happen. So I just wonder how confident you are in the capacity of Lucy's team, and if you could come in as the cabinet member for that, I'd appreciate it. And then if you could bring Lucy in on her confidence within her own team, that would be appreciated. That's the first question. Would you want me to come back on the second one?
Yes, yes, please, if we could have an answer to that, because that was both very interesting.
Yeah, the 44 million that the efficiency programme put together with the officers, and they're all here to speak for themselves now, that they seem quite confident, and again, we've put a contingency in for that for obvious reason. I know it's the biggest savings at the council. I think the biggest one before was 14 million, I think, do I remember right?
21.
Sorry?
It's 21.6 in adult social care.
Okay. Yeah, as a cabinet member, I've been to a lot of meetings and I've met a lot of really enthusiastic and who understand what every council is going through. And I'm sure you, more than anybody, know how difficult it is. But can I give you an 100% guarantee and magic wand? It doesn't work like that. But, I think we've got a really good team of cabinet members and officers, and my way of working on this is that every portfolio holder in the cabinet now will be responsible for the budget.
Exactly.
And they will, every month, will review the budget. And I don't think it's fair all the time to put it on the financial portfolio.
You would say that, Councillor.
Well said. But they understand their responsibilities. And as a new council, that's the way we want to work.
Totally.
Thank you.
So I guess from a confidence and delivery perspective, what I would reflect, as you've outlined from the mitigations plan, this is a significant amount of those mitigations fall in our social care. And what I would say is that we have are really strengthening the way that organisationally we are supporting the delivery of the portfolio in our social care. I think we've had a long-standing focus on supporting children and families early. That work, is very well embedded, and that's the benefits of that in terms of ability to put forward those mitigations, whilst also kind of focusing on improving outcomes, but continuing that kind of approach. But as I say, I think taking a much more whole organisational approach, certainly from a transformation portfolio approach, to supporting the other social care delivery. So I'm increasingly confident we'll be able to see those mitigations. From an LGR perspective, I think there's undoubtedly work for us to do to look at capacity and resourcing to be able to focus both on the outcomes that we need to achieve for our residents, through the work rate priorities of the council plan and also mitigations plan, whilst also delivering the government requirements as they come forward around the government reorganisation. And certainly, I think, Nigel, from a financing perspective, that work is in progress in determining the resourcing approach to that.
If I may, I think the approach has been we're going to treat LGR as additional. And I think because so that we don't get distracted from what we really need to do as we're here in terms of improving outcomes for our residents as well as saving money for the council in terms of these programs. But we'll treat LGR as a separate exercise, and therefore it needs to be resourced properly. Yeah. So in theory, therefore, it will be additional capacity that we'll need in order to do the LGR work rather than stretching the existing resource.
Councillor Smith, if you want to go point 2, please.
So, one point at LGR, we're assuming it's all going to go through.
Oh, well.
So that could be not Stuart nodding his head, so he's got the same view as me, so well done.
Thank you, and it's positive to hear that from all three speakers, because I was in the LGA feedback, and that's exactly to date. It's fair to say that the council hasn't treated it as 2 separate projects, and therefore resource at the higher level of Lucy and others has been overtaken by LGR to the detriment of service delivery and savings. The quality of services has remained high, actually, but to the detriment of the departmental projects, and I think it's now time that we move that forward in a separate way. And the LGA echoed that in feedback, and it's key that you obviously work together to look to implement that quickly to give confidence to the cabinet. So thank you, and that's pleasing to hear. I'd just like to move on to the efficiency working group, if I may, paragraph 73, page 15 or 25, whichever number you look at. Paragraph 74, 75, 76 set out all the work that the Cabinet have undertaken since setting up the committee, which is great. This is a finance paper, and when I read those 3 paragraphs, I had to remind myself it was a finance paper because there was not one number in any of those paragraphs about how much funding each of those 7 or 8 review projects has saved the council or will save the council in the MTFS. So I'm just wondering if Scrutiny would like to use this meeting, as we're being asked to do, to encourage the Cabinet to publish some figures on that, so that all members of the council and the public who have been told that they've elected an administration to save money can actually see where that is, because as a councillor, I cannot, and that is hard to say to our residents. So you've obviously carried out a lot of work. I would hate you, Councillor Matthews, to be asked by your cabinet colleagues next week how much you've saved, because the answer is not in this paper. I think it should be.
Yeah, I agree on that, Sam, and we'll come back to that, and the cabinet members will be aware of the savings that we've got. And I've got a list here, so yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Just to let you know, Councillor Smith, apparently in the next meeting, we do have a report coming from the Commission.
One second.
Yeah.
So on the next meeting, we've got a report on the Cabinet Working Group review on the financial procurement contract management arrangements and outcomes. So that was agreed in September. You will get a report on that, and that will be there on the 12th of March.
Well done.
You should get all your figures.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilmot, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Not what has been said about the care costs for some of the services that we supply. I'm just saying, it seems a service transformation programme is underway to enhance prevention services and reduce demand for high-cost care. Can you give me some information on some of the benefits that these initiatives are delivering for residents and are helping this council to improve financial sustainability? And of course, part of the question is also, if a large overspend in the budget is required for adult social care and children's and people's care, will it be necessary to cut other budgets for them, or will it be taken out of reserves? And primarily, delivering care was primarily
our own responsibility a few years ago. I remember it, I was on this council at that time. And it suddenly went to private enterprise. I'm just saying, was this a mistake? And is there any mileage in trying to resurrect the old system of delivering our own services again? Or do we have to, or does anybody got any ideas of how to cut costs for care? Thank you.
I think we've got about 4 questions in there. We might have to split it down.
It's all about care.
Guys are talented, man. You can.
I try and tend to answer that. So I'm Gavin, the Director for Social Care and Health. I think starting with the positive, I think one of the things for our people is the fact that we've done a lot of work on transforming the way we deliver care and people. So actually, a lot of people now, when you're into residential care, they're going to places like supported living, which is an alternative that gives you more independence, which gives you more opportunities in which they can do with their life, which they can't get the same opportunities in residential care. So that feels positive. For the first time, we've now turned over the number of people. There are more people supported living now than there were previously, and we're turning the tide on people getting into residential care. So that's the first thing. I think in terms of the cost of care, of course, that's not all the problem of Nottinghamshire. Actually, last year was a very significant year in the cost of care in relation to living wage and national insurance, and so £29 million just for Nottinghamshire additional cost was put in because of the care costs. I think it links to sort of things that Lisa said about looking at this as a wider council though, because actually some of the private community work that we're doing in terms of prevention, some of the things about stepping people down to alternative non-statutory services is one of the ways in which we either prevent people needing statutory care, or one of the ways in which we delay people needing statutory care, which then has an effect on budget. So there are a range of ways in which we can do that, including the way we organise ourselves as an organisation. In relation to the thing about doing things in-house or whether we outsource them, I think that has to be done on a case-by-case basis, on a value for money basis. So quite often, the total cost of something you have can be more than have to do with externally. It depends on your market though, whether you've got a market for it. So if there isn't a market for it, then there's something that we would probably do in-house in order to develop that market and then have it. But equally, I would say, I'm very keen to make sure that we use things like obviously care services, which is a regulated service, to make sure that it's doing personal care and not doing things like shopping and cleaning, because actually shopping and cleaning can be done by other non-regulatory services. So there's a range of ways in which we ensure that we try and keep budgets to a minimum in terms of the demand is higher, costs are higher, and that's the conundrum of which we're dealing with.
I don't know whether Viv, Anne, you wanted to come in about the other parts of care that Councillor not referring to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I suppose one of the things I would just like to make colleagues aware of is that we have got a deep dive on the thriving communities element of the programme, of the portfolio of change later on in this agenda. So if it's okay, Councillor, can you hear me? So we have got thriving communities on the agenda later on, which will cover the cross-functional approach to early help and prevention. So if it's okay, if I can pause some of your questions there, I think I might answer some of those then. And if there's any questions that I pick up then, very happy to pick up as part of that agenda item, but I don't want to duplicate, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
That's fine.
So I just think that's short. So you'll know that we have a big programme going on in terms of looking at our quality of our fostering, to be able to increase our fostering capacity, but also to manage the market in terms of children's home placements. You'll know that we're going to have developing our own internal children's home estate too. We've had some recent success about just by some engagement sessions with some of our external children's home providers, which can be astronomical because our children have significantly higher needs. So we've had some recent success in the renegotiation of some of the costs of care among some of these complex young people. But you know, in relation to children, we're talking a lot about helping members to understand some of the real benefits in the implementation of the Families First programme. Families First is absolutely all about getting up close in the community and a huge push into the prevention agenda. So our intention is to make sure that we have children in the right place for the right value of cost of care. And also maybe worth noting, we are working with a really well-known and credible consultancy organisation called Empower. They've done some really great work nationally. We have Empower working with us to look at the family care tool. So the way we're doing all that transformation work, but certainly the trajectory looks good. You're on with the children can present with extremely high needs, and we nationally have a bit of a challenge in terms of sometimes being hamstrung by the lack of sufficiency. So we're focusing on developing our own provision and managing our markets locally, working regionally in our D2N2 projects, are all part of that transformation.
And if I may finish, because it was quite a comprehensive question, really, because Councillor Wilmot also asked about overspends and how we manage those. I'll go back to a point I think I've made in November about setting budgets for particularly those large statutory services in terms of adults and children's social care. It's really difficult to think of it, setting it as an absolute budget, because it's about meeting demand. And demand, and particularly around adult social care, the ability to make contributions to your care, all mean that it's really complex to say that that is the maximum. If somebody presents and needs our assistance, and we will meet that assistance, so as a consequence, you will overspend or underspend. It's about, so you are setting a budget you know is going to be wrong. What you try to do is set a budget that's going to be wrong by as small amount as possible, with a lot of assumptions. And that's about, we come back to, how do we manage risk, which is what was Councillor Wilmot's question. There are bits within actions that we can take and management do take if it looks like a prediction that there's going to be an overspend. And those are the sorts of things that we take in year in terms of actions to try and manage the budget. Again, as a council, as in its entirety, not necessarily the department. We may recognise there's an overspend in children's or an overspend in adults, but together we all try to work out how we can actually solve the budget problem for the council. And the fallback to it, quite rightly, is around that risk assessment in the general fund balance, in terms of we do hold some risk in that general fund balance around demand and the cost of delivering demand.
And if you forgive me just coming in on the back of that, and I think one of the really important things is how the practice really matters, being able to do that. And we know that in children's services, making sure that we have the right children in the right place for the right cost is also part of delivering on our adult care financial plans too, because we need children to be kept well, kept safe, proportionate to their age and needs. So that we don't tip in a problem when children get a bit older into services.
The committee doesn't mind. I would like to ask a question on the back of what has just been said while it's straight there. You've just mentioned the general fund, and throughout the year we would have to up or down it depending on any crisis that happened mid-year or something to change the care needs or people coming in. So as the general fund was 35.9 at the 31st of March 2025. Of that 35.9 general fund balance, how much is uncommitted and available to deal with unforeseen circumstances at this particular time?
At this particular time, all of that 35.9, because even though we're overspending in adult social care particularly, other departments are coming up with underspend. So the issue in terms of how we're managing this year's overspend will not draw down on the general fund balance. So we're fine with the general fund balance.
Just as I've got a starting point, thanks ever so much, because there's going to be changes as the year goes on. Oh, Councillor Clooney, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a couple of questions about, well, generally, I know you've gone into a lot of detail about these huge savings that you're expecting in adult social care, nearly £11 million next year, which seems enormous. So I'll watch lovely to see those savings come in. But as we've also just been told, it is a demand-led service, which we all know. So I can only see that obviously demand will probably go up, and so whether that's still achievable is another thing we'll find out. But also hopefully we'll be able to see those figures as the year's going on. And like as Councillor Smith pointed out, we're unable to see the savings that you've identified this year on these topics. So hopefully we'll be able to actually see visibility of those things. I just want to talk about table 3, which is on page 23 of the whole pack. I've just got a question about whether I can see a line in there for remove council tax increase assumptions, and I'm just wondering what's the thinking behind putting that line in there. Thank you.
It's a very good question, Councillor. It was done deliberately on my part, just so that we wasn't to try and help the committee understand that it's not a debate about what council tax is, but at least you understand what the council tax assumptions were in the original model. But well, it would suggest that you would be putting council tax up. Yeah, but I was trying to get away from a conversation around council tax, because that's not overused. Conversation is around what the level of council tax is.
Can I come back on that? Because yeah, looking at it, it did look like I'm not sure why that needed to be in this conversation, because that is part of the assumptions, and certainly looking at the year coming. That would show a big shortfall, really increased council tax, although obviously it is being somewhat mitigated by the additional money that's coming from the government, which isn't there to mitigate council tax things.
If you looked at that table and you went across to the end there and said it was 28.7 million, which is the funding gap, you can see that the central government are giving the local authority the ability to raise council tax up to a referendum level of 4.99. If it was to do so, it would generate £83 million worth of council tax, and therefore the local authority would be in surplus by 50 million. So it's either I sort of left the assumption in at 4.99 and showed that it was a huge surplus, or quite likely, let's not have a discussion around council tax and just reverse that out so you can understand what the real position is for the local authority without a discussion around council tax.
Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to come back. As far as the plans for the medium-term financial strategy are concerned, a lot of assumptions have been made, including assumptions on inflation, wage increases and funding sources. Are they really realistic? And how have these assumptions been developed? And do you feel the medium-term financial strategy is a sustainable financial plan for the next 4 years? I've got another question on...
One at a time, John.
I'll wait for that.
Yeah, please. Quite rightly, Councillor Wilmot, the paper is actually trying to set out what those assumptions are, so that councillors can actually feel that there's been a correct approach and assessment of what the risks are and what those assumptions should be. Inevitably, one of those assumptions will be wrong, but at least you've got also some sensitivity analysis so you can see what's the impact of that assumption being slightly wrong. The assessment overall will be when, in terms of those assumptions, will be when the council or the cabinet first debate the budget on the 29th of January, and that will include my assessment about the robustness of the estimates. At the moment, it's open to a question, basically, about would you think inflation and the assumption around pay inflation should be 3%, 4%, 5, 6 or 7? That's the question really for you, Councillor, in terms of what you think it should be, as opposed to whether my robust estimate was correct.
And my final question, thank you, Chair, is on reserves. The report states the balance of reserves on the general fund stands at 35.9 million, and we are required to recommend general fund balance for the 26-27. What considerations or assumptions inform us to make an acceptable level of reserves?
It feels like I should refer to my previous answer. Yeah.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I've got a couple of questions, if I may. First of all, I make a comment where I can't let Councillor Matthews get away with his opening statement where he says he's had 8 months to fix the accounts. And his own papers actually state that Nottinghamshire is in a stronger position than many councils, thanks to prudent financial management and ongoing service transformation. This approach has helped maintain the service delivery, limiting council tax increases. So perhaps he should read his own papers as far as that is concerned. And just furthering my point really is this paper is about 26-27, and by the time 26-27 is over, he will not be able to try and use the excuse that he's only been in power for 8 months, because he will have been in power for 8 months plus 12 months, which makes 20 months. That's my opening comment. But my first question is to allow people to turn to the right page, page 28 of the pack, page 18 of this paper, where we are dealing with a £37 million overspend as far as the high needs budget is concerned. Previously, last year, it was 18.1 million, which was covered by the previous authority by reserves. There is no place on their budget, on the forthcoming budget, to deal with this 37 million. It is not accounted for anywhere. It is not good enough to turn around and say central government are going to take over responsibility for the high needs block in 2028. If you think that central government are going to deal with these overspends, you're living in proud cuckoo land. And we have got not just this year, we have got next year. So is it going to double again? If it does, it will leave us with a deficit somewhere in the region of 100 million. And this council will have that on its books. My question really is, Madam Chairman, is what does Councillor Matthews intend to do about this? Does he intend to, in 2 years' time, have a deficit of 100 million? Because I can assure you it will have a considerable impact on our service delivery as a council in 2 years' time. That's my first question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I can have a little stab at this. And I'm sure Nigel will come in if I get it wrong. But the high needs block, the SEND provision, is overspent everywhere. And that's no detriment to the 18 million that we inherited, or the fact it's gone up. Because we've had it explained to us, it's demand-led. So as demand comes in, we have to fill it regardless of whether we've got the money for it. Now, I believe we discussed this briefly yesterday, and there is Kent, which has a 200 million deficit in their SEND budget. And the government will be looking at this, whether they will do anything positive, we do not know, in February. So while we recognise it is a problem, and I think Nigel will come in and back me up, we are permitted at this time to have a negative budget, and ours is one of the lowest, thanks to the previous administration, and we are going to do our damnedest to keep it that way. Nigel, please save me.
Well, I don't know whether Councillor Matthews wants to come first.
If you look at paragraph 93, statement there, it's quite clearly stated the views there. And coming back to what you say about the government going to take over this, nobody knows, Bruce. Nobody knows anything what the government's going to do in 12 months, 18 months. And I thank you for saying to me, I can't hide behind 8 months going forward. And I fully agree on that. I'm not trying to hide behind anything. I'm trying to learn as I'm going forward. Thank you.
The only thing from me, Madam Chairman, is to say that, and it's for that particular reason in terms of that deficit and that the negative, as I explained last time, was there's probably the requirement, therefore, for us to hold on to more reserves to counter that negative, still in the anticipation that this is a central government problem and it's for central government to find the solution as opposed to it all falling to local authority.
Did you have another question, Councillor?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. Chairman, I just make a comment. I'm not in Hampshire or Surrey. I'm in Nottinghamshire. And all I'm interested in is the management of these accounts as far as the people of Nottinghamshire are concerned. In fact, your comment even more cements the fact that the government will not take on board that debt, because why should it take on 100 million in Kent and only, well, maybe how long is a piece of string, and only a amount in other councils? It will not, because it's not a fair position to take. My second question, Councillor Matthews was obviously not present at the Governance and Ethics Committee yesterday, and obviously Mazars came in to give the presentation on their audit letter, and they made 4 points. Well, there were 4 major points made in that audit letter. One of those was the provision of funding for the LGR process. I've read through the report, the budget update report, and nowhere can I see that any provision has been made. Does the Cabinet member intend to make provision for the LGR process, or just wait on the wing and a prayer to find out whether it actually happens or not? Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's all I use.
Yeah, the budget survey 20, if you look at paragraph 31, there's also, and I was at the Governance and Ethics yesterday.
Sorry, I didn't see you.
I sat next to you.
Oh, did you? Right.
I did say hello.
I was that busy concentrating on the committee.
And I've got you smiling again, Bruce, as well, so that's even better.
At the moment, this budget report doesn't include the cost of local government reorganisation, but quite rightly, as it says in this report, as it did in the paper that was when we were doing the submission, the ability to pay for the reorganisation this side of the local government review would be, could be and will be funded from capital receipts. There might be a timing issue in terms of meeting all of the capital receipts, but there is headroom in the capital receipts in total. That there may be a gap, in which case it would come from reserves, which is another reason for why I'm suggesting in this report that we reverse what was a previous decision around utilising reserves to support the MTFS.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions, please? So if we're going to note that the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources will take away the key issues, and I believe Sarah's been, Martin has been busy writing and jotting notes.
Yeah, so I should know from previous years what I would do. I'll go through the notes from today. They'll all be written up, and then in the Cabinet report that will be published next week, there'll be an appendix included on that. It includes all the considerations by overview, and there'll all be responses from the Cabinet Member and Nigel as well in that. So look out for that in the Cabinet agenda that comes out next week.
So if members are happy to note that and proceed, can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you very much. Now, would the committee like a 5-minute, 10-minute reprieve, rest break at this point, because we've got 2 more further items to discuss? Speak to me. Yes, 11:40. Thank you.
No, it's very good. She was very good. Yeah.
you're good to go.
Right, we shall resume committee, if that's all right. Thank you. So we're on to a budget, we've just completed the budget and we're on to agenda item 5. Before that, I must submit the apologies from the councillors who have had to go away on some business. And we will move on. Agenda item 5, Nottinghamshire Domestic Abuse Strategy 2026-2029. If I may ask Councillor Dawn Justice, Cabinet Member for Communities and Public Health, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm introducing a paper seeking feedback and input on the draft Nottinghamshire Domestic Abuse Strategy 2026 to 2029. Domestic abuse is a priority for the authority, and we have a requirement to develop a strategy with partners as part of the Domestic Abuse Act 2021. The authority recognises that domestic abuse has a significant impact on the whole family and can have lifelong consequences for adults and children. Support to flee to safety, recover from trauma and move on positively is key to breaking the cycle. Statistically, domestic abuse affects 1 in 5 adults in their lifetime, which equates to 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men. The vision statement and strategy included in the report were developed with partners. The vision states, domestic abuse is a complex social problem which impacts people, families, communities and services across our society. In Nottinghamshire, we will take a zero tolerance stance on domestic abuse so that everyone can live safely and experience healthy relationships without the threat of domestic abuse. We will focus on prevention and early intervention, provide support to survivors and families, and bring perpetrators to justice by taking a coordinated community response approach. Collectively, we will improve outcomes and reduce the impact of domestic violence in and on communities, so that our communities as a whole can flourish and thrive. Overview Committee are asked to provide feedback and input on the draft Nottinghamshire Domestic Abuse Strategy, and also for members to share information on the availability of training opportunities around domestic abuse that are open to all, and also to promote the specialist domestic abuse support services that are available across Nottinghamshire. I'll now hand over to Rebecca, who's a Senior Public Health Commissioning Manager, to take us through the report. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. So the Nottinghamshire Domestic Abuse Strategy has been developed with system partners from the Nottinghamshire Domestic Abuse Partnership Board at a workshop in the summer, and with domestic abuse survivors via our co-production service. Across the system, there is a commitment to listening to survivors and ensuring that their voices drive meaningful system change. The co-production service will help the development of the strategy's action plan, understand and meet the needs of all survivors of domestic abuse. The strategy aligns with both local and national violence against women and girls strategies and considers the information within Nottinghamshire victims and safe accommodation needs assessments. This strategy sets out the overall vision, aim, our approach and associated strategic ambitions that Nottinghamshire is taking to tackle domestic abuse over the next 3 years. The main aim of the strategy states, across Nottinghamshire we will work together to minimise the risk of and the harm from domestic abuse, ensuring that those affected by domestic abuse get the right support as early as possible and holding individuals who are abusive to account. We will prioritise prevention to ensure our future is different from our present and past. There have been 4 strategic ambitions developed, which are Ambition 1, prevention, which covers ensuring effective primary and secondary prevention work, educating children and young people and intervening early with perpetrators to reduce future domestic abuse.
Ambition 2, supporting, provide help and support to survivors of domestic abuse and their families so that they can rebuild their lives. Ambition 3, responding, safeguard and protect survivors of domestic abuse to reduce the levels of harm experienced and hold perpetrators to account, and helping to rebuild trust and confidence in our criminal justice system, especially the police. Ambition 4, strengthening the system, work together to strengthen the system to prevent and reduce the harm caused by domestic abuse, collaborating to develop a whole system response to a whole person and their family. The strategy encourages all partners to believe that domestic abuse is everybody's business. It will be owned and overseen by the Domestic Abuse Partnership Board, who will lead the development and monitoring of the associated action plan, delivering towards the strategic aims. The next steps following hearing your views today are to continue the discussions with partners to strengthen and finalise the strategy, share the strategy with the Health and Wellbeing Board, and it's going to Cabinet for corporate endorsement in March 26. And then following this, we will be developing an action plan with all partners across the system to address those strategic ambitions. And these ambitions will also be contributed to by our survivors. And you may have noticed as you walked in here today that we have the Domestic Abuse Partnership Board workshop taking place in the Assembly Hall at the moment. And that workshop is currently focusing on co-production. So we have a number of survivors there talking to us about their experiences and integrating those experiences into the strategy as we speak. So I'm happy to take any questions. Sorry, it was
Thank you very much for the report. I would like to move the recommendations and seek a seconder. The recommendations are on page 45 of the agenda. Thank you. Now I'd like to open the floor to debate, if anybody would like to speak. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask you a question about your preventative strategy? I can't say that word, strategy. Will you be getting into education establishments, for example, colleges, and doing as a preventative measure, speaking to them about the consequence of domestic abuse and how to report it and things like that?
So the preventative strategy and the approach with educational establishments will be a central theme to that preventative approach. We already do a lot of work within schools, and there's also a lot of work being rolled out with the Consent Coalition, but we intend that all environments where children and young people are entering should have information available, and staff should be informed and skilled to be able to address domestic abuse as it arises.
Thank you.
Councillor Cox.
Good morning. Thank you for the report. I noticed on page 1 you've got the statistics, domestic abuse statistics for the UK down. Are we from a Nottinghamshire County point of view, are we within those statistics in a higher position or a lower position for domestic abuse? Where do we sit within the sort of national statistics?
National statistics.
Sorry, Mark.
No problem. Our statistics do mirror national statistics. However, I think it's always important to recognise that sometimes better promotion can increase reporting, which can look like you have a higher number of survivors when actually you're finding the hidden domestic abuse within our societies. So it's always a bit tricky to compare figures across police forces because they always have a large number of underreported and hidden domestic abuse within society. But normally we find that for Nottinghamshire, our figures are aligned with the national figures.
Thank you, and I agree that it's better, I think, that we have sometimes higher numbers, because that means the message is getting out to the public that, you know, you don't have to be in an abusive relationship. And so, thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for the report and the great work that you're doing on this. What are the key challenges to the implementation of the strategy, and how will you address those?
Good question.
I know it's a big question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key challenges are some of the wicked issues that we see at the moment related to both housing and being able to flee domestic abusive relationships and gain safe accommodation either within Nottinghamshire or outside of Nottinghamshire. That is an ongoing challenge. The other big challenge is the criminal justice system, and that is both being able to the cases to go successfully go through the criminal justice system, and also now what's happening is the confidence of survivors with the criminal justice system, because there's substantial waits, and there's also been a reduction in the amount of time that perpetrators of domestic abuse are seeing as their sentence. So these issues are reducing the confidence of survivors. So they are issues that will be covered in the strategy. Even if we can make small movements on those issues, that still will have a really significant impact on survivors. And we'll continue to listen to survivors around what those wicked issues are that are really impacting upon their lives.
Thank you. So thank you, Rebecca, for a very helpful and comprehensive answer. As you've articulated, domestic abuse is a wicked issue, so it's a really complex issue. And I think what the strategy really highlights is that ambition across the system to bring partners together, to work together around the building blocks of health. So we've talked a lot around that in this committee in terms of what's those things that wrap around our population and our people to allow them to have the best health and wellbeing outcomes, including giving them opportunities to hopefully not experience domestic abuse, but if they do, then to give them the opportunities to survive and thrive after those opportunities after that trauma. I think the other thing that I think is really important, particularly some of the questions before though, is we know that there are patterns of intergenerational domestic abuse around families, and I think the work around really embedding that preventative lens so that young people understand what a healthy relationship looks like, because that may be something that is or isn't mirrored in their own households and homes that they're in, and then making sure that we're giving them the right support, whether that's from a mental health support area, whether that's from supported accommodation, to wrap around them, to allow them to think around how they might want to respond to that, but also how we can support families in that. So I think in summary, it's a really complex issue, and this strategy gives us an opportunity to turn up volume around the system approach. And Rebecca and I have had conversations around how do we extend the links between the Domestic Abuse Partnership Board and that broader work of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and how that will be linking into things that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the agenda around things like integrated neighbourhood public service. So there's quite a strong theme in terms of that moving forward.
Councillor Justice?
Yeah, I think as well, from a council point of view, is although this is not our council at the moment, one of the issues will be accommodation, because fleeing to a refuge is the first step, but obviously that is it's not the answer. There has to be a look to the future and for the survivors to move on. And very often, because there's a lack of affordable accommodation, must be a real challenge to moving on from the refuge. And that's one of the reasons as well, probably, why there are fewer places in refuges, because people have to stay longer, because there is no future to move on. So obviously that's controlled currently by the borough and district councils, but with LGR coming along, a broader look at accommodation, both for homelessness and for survivors of domestic abuse, and in our society is something that councils have got to look forward and concentrate on.
The committee permits that question, and it's usually, as I do, a bit abstract. Everybody will agree it's complicated because the type of domestic abuse, or whether it's mental or money or physical. When we have people that are coming forward, like you say, you've got a working group there, how many have another episode of domestic abuse? They talk about when you're a criminal, you're a repeat offender. If you've been brought up a certain way and you haven't learned the basics, how do we help those people when we've split the partnership up, if you like, not to go on to reoffend? And how in heavens are we going to quantify any of this to say we've made an improvement?
So if it's okay, I'll go through the headlines and then I'm going to hand over to Rebecca to put the detail in for me. So I think you highlight a really important point there around, first of all, that domestic abuse is complex and that there are cycles of domestic abuse. So we know that, and Rebecca will quote me on the exact figure, but the survivors of domestic abuse will have had a significant number of encounters of domestic abuse before they get to a point where they feel that they want to do something about it. And I think there is something around how we're supporting survivors to maybe think around that approach at a slightly earlier point. But you are right in terms of there is some further work to do around how do we support survivors to continue on that journey when they may have been in relationships for many, many years, may have family and children with those perpetrators, and so it's not an easy split or break up. Now there's a range of support services that we have around that, and depending on the different support that they have, whether it's some of the sanctuary schemes that makes their current home safe, or whether it's moving into refuge and then onto a different accommodation, there are different processes and strategies to support them. But if it's okay, Rebecca, would you mind picking up some of the detail in terms of some of those support services we've got? Thank you.
Absolutely. So it normally takes 7 attempts before a survivor is able to successfully leave a relationship. And as you've already said, abuse doesn't finish when somebody leaves a relationship. Post-separation abuse is a real issue and can continue for a lifetime for some survivors. So that means that within our support services, we have to ensure that we've got different levels of support and different types of support available to mirror those experiences that individuals may be having, and also the experiences of their children within the relationship and the impact it can have on the children. As part of those support services, we have interventions that enable individuals to be able to sort of rebuild their lives, and also to review what healthy relationships look like and what the abuse may have looked like. And that is a secondary preventative approach to help individuals to see abuse or in an early phase within newer relationships, because people tend to start new relationships after they've left one relationship. So we try to ensure that we've given the support to survivors so that they can identify abuse in future relationships early and leave those relationships if they see that. So that's the support to the survivor side. The other part that you mentioned was around repeat perpetration of abuse, which is the other side of the coin. And we do see that. Many perpetrators of abuse do not only perpetrate abuse against one person, they perpetrate abuse against multiple people. So they often, when one relationship ends, they move on to another relationship and that cycle starts again. So that's something that the police work very hard on. It's something that is raised within the multi-agency risk assessment. And also there are programs that are focusing on those particular perpetrators to try and disrupt perpetration. And we do, within the strategy, there is a whole section around responding, and that will include that disruption of perpetration. It is a real challenging area, and this is where the complexities really do start to play out.
So we need to come back. How do we quantify it though? Are they quantifiable? I don't know, even if you've got one success, but is it quantifiable so we can say, we have improved this service? I mean, it's great, let's do it, but we need to justify the money we spend.
Yeah, I think that we need to continue to be reviewing the data. The data does allow us to see how things are changing and evolving. We have to work with partners who hold information on perpetrators to understand better what perpetration looks like. That information is mainly with the police, it's not actually with the local authority. But as part of the joint strategic needs assessment that we will be creating for our future commissioning of services, and it is mentioned within the report, we will be looking at both the survivor information that we have and also the perpetrator information to be able to start to review where we are now and where we hopefully want to get to be improving the lives of our survivors and having a zero tolerance to domestic abuse across the county.
Smashing. Councillor Clooney.
Hi there, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for this report on this really important issue. Great strategy. So mostly I'm talking about, good things about it, like the way it's been integrated with other organisations, especially within the LGR. So that will kind of be incorporated in those terms. I'm guessing having no reported incidents will be the absolute goal, but I appreciate that's a very high target, but that would be absolutely amazing if that was the case. Also, going from what Councillor Mason said, if this helps one person not to be in an abusive relationship, then it's worth it. I'm not sure we need to quantify exactly what help it's given, but I think that's a really important point. And I'm keen to promote, these things that are available to help people wherever I can. And I also want to mention a quick mention is that I'm sure you've been following the story on Coronation Street, which has really brought this home. There's been a story around abusive relationship, and it's been really insightful. And how horrific things are, and nobody else knows what's going on, and it's just horrific. So, thanks for all the work you can do in this area. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Any more questions on this topic? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much. Just a short statement on my thoughts and then a couple of quick questions. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. May I first of all say that there was many training opportunities as far as domestic abuse is concerned, and all we've got to do as an organisation and councillors, everybody involved, make sure that in this situation, the job to do, we've got to make it happen. Unfortunately, domestic abuse crime is often a hidden crime that many people don't report. I do know that from past experiences with some of my constituents. When I saw the social and economic costs of the report about domestic abuse, £78 million it costs us all at the present time. I was absolutely astounded by it all. We all have to do something about it. We've got to do something about it. Again, prevention and early prevention schemes are essential. a lot of the partnerships that we do are not part of. But there are a number of organisations that have knowledge of these problems, but are never spoken about. The police, the fire, the ambulance, the councils, church groups, charities, schools and colleges, and many volunteer groups all have some sort of information to help if we get involved with most of them. And I just wondered, all in all, the domestic abuse cases are a really serious situation about some of them, because it's a very complex situation that's happened. Now, a couple of questions I want to ask is, how will the strategy support the delivery of education and awareness raising on what healthy relationships should look like with children and young people? And what will be materially different by 2029 for survivors of domestic abuse compared with today? And what will the main challenges around implementing the strategy be, and how will these be overcome? And the questions everyone is asking, how will local government reorganisation impact on the delivery of this strategy? Thank you, Chair.
Again, you might have to share John's questions out between you.
I'll make a start on that, the big ones. So we've already touched on the healthy relationship education within schools, and the strategy will include healthy relationship education within schools. We already have an offer for children and young people at every key stage, and we hope to continue with that. I think that's something that is an ambition. Excuse me. The material difference and change, I think that's something that we will develop as part of the delivery and action plan. So that's something that will require all organisations to commit to actions that will make a difference. And I think it's hard to identify what all of those actions are at this time, because they need to be created by all of the partners from the domestic abuse strategy and partnership board. The challenges to overcome, I've mentioned a couple already around housing and the criminal justice system. One of the big challenges is going to be local government reform. And I also would like to say that's also going to be a huge opportunity. So the opportunity of bringing housing, the work around community safety into one authority, really for a complex issue like domestic abuse, provides us with that opportunity to do things differently, to really understand our communities better, to build upon what's coming as your next agenda item, the Thriving Communities agenda. And I think start to look at how do we make our communities safer for all people, and particularly thinking about the impact of domestic abuse on the individuals within all of our communities. Hopefully that's answered most of your questions.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, I actually do see local government organisation as well as a positive in this area, because it brings everything under one umbrella, and it lessens the number of partners that you're having to go to, or as both as someone who's supporting a survivor or as a survivor, because instead of having to go to the one local authority to deal with housing and maybe through ourselves through the refuge, it will be all under one roof. It won't be one person dealing with it, but it will give that extra opportunity to have more control and influence over the factors with fewer partners.
Lovely. Any more questions? Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to just highlight a little bit on financial impact. of the cost of this service. As over the committee, we would like to know a little bit how does the cost affect the Nottinghamshire. Generally, it's approximately £78 billion across the country, which is seen in the note of the report. Fantastic from your side as officers putting the report together. What I can see, £2 billion have been allocated every year for until 2028 for the Nottinghamshire. The Domestic Abuse Act. So, what would you, what effect will be happening to the for the organisation for LGR coming up? And is there going to be any demanding money need to be to the fund? Any to expansion, please? Thank you.
So currently we have a number of funding streams that are utilised to deliver domestic abuse support. Some of those are within the council and some of those are external to the council and come from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. The funding that you've referenced, the just over 2 million a year, that's the funding that's come from the domestic abuse duty that was provided to the authority as part of Part 4 of the Domestic Abuse Act 2021. That funding will continue into the new authority. However, the funding is currently allocated based on a population level. So we would expect that the funding will reduce in 2028 based upon our new population. So that's just something we have to be mindful of and we have to plan for the future. There is also further funding committed from the Public Health Grant to help with the delivery of our wider support services. And that is also contributed to by the Police and Crime Commissioner. That funding is roughly £1.5 million a year. So that's both from the Public Health Grant and the Police and Crime Commissioner combined funding. That funding is currently committed up to 2028, and our services will be recommissioned from 2029 onwards based upon the new LGR footprint. So there's a lot of change expected, and I think we'll have to ensure that our future services and our future model is aligned with whatever the available budget envelopes are. As you can appreciate, at the moment we've got lots of unknowns around future budgets, and that will be something that we hope that the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment that we develop in 2026 will provide us with the evidence around what the level of what budgets we require in order to deliver the level of service to meet the needs of the future geography.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. And just building on what Rebecca's saying there will be a number of services across all of the councils where we will need to understand what the population needs are as the geographies of LGR are confirmed. That will provide us some opportunities to think about how we do things differently. And we will take each individual service as we move forward in that. So different services will have different timelines in terms of when the contract ends and what those opportunities are. And we will work through those at an individual service basis. But please do be assured that we are doing that work now and will continue to do that work to really understand the needs of the population, because there will be some redistribution across the two new unitary authorities as we work through that.
And just as a quick addition as well, obviously LGR does mean that part of the county council area will move into the new city council area. And I also would like to assure you that we are already having conversations with our city colleagues to ensure that the survivors in those areas, their needs will be met within the new city footprint, because that's just as equally important for us to make sure that we've got synergy across both the new city and the new county authority areas.
Thank you very much. Is there any more questions on that? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to reiterate what everyone else has said. It's a really good report, very comprehensive and very thorough. And I really like the idea of what you put about the support services, categorising it into 3 different groups, because I think people have got the assumption it's mainly women who are the victims of domestic abuse. But by giving telephone numbers specifically for women, for men and for LGBTQ plus groups, that's opening it to everyone, because males may have a different, idea of who to report it to and may feel like it's being seen as weak by reporting it. So by having the 3 different telephone numbers, that's a really good idea. So I just want to say well done for that. Thank you.
Councillor Fox, did you want to?
Yeah. Excuse me, thank you for the report. Just the support services, paragraph 23, which is what my friend Councillor Mangain has just highlighted. Where is the cost of those coming from? Who's paying for those 3 helplines?
They're paid for jointly between the City Council, the County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilmot, just one question in the one question, John.
It says in the report, Chair, that there may be a report coming back in 12 months. I thought this was a very, very important issue, and it should be less than that. I don't know what committee members think about that. And also the monitoring, measuring of the monitoring system that's going to be put forward on the 4 main items. How will we know what the strategy, if it's working, what sort of percentage are we looking for in all the work that's going on? Thank you.
I think we've kind of quantified that in my earlier question, John. So are we going to record it?
Oh, I know that, but what percentage do you think is acceptable on the replies?
Yeah.
I would argue against putting a percentage on the strategy. If that would be okay, and the reason for that is the conversation we had earlier around hidden domestic abuse, and we don't want to be trying to drive numbers down and therefore not looking to identify all the domestic abuse across Nottinghamshire and provide the support to all survivors. My other point would be, if we want to measure progress, I think that will be best measured against the action plan and the delivery plan, and looking at the RAG ratings for that delivery plan.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's really good. Just moving on from Councillor Mann's question, the support services. How do we get this information out? Because I haven't seen any of these. So how do we get this information out to the public? And the second one is, we're encouraged to attend training things. I don't know about them either, sorry.
So we have details and support cards that I can leave outside the door today. I'll go upstairs and get some for you. And they can be shared across all agencies, in all venues. We also have an opportunity for you to go on training with Equation. I can, following this meeting, provide details of that training and how you can access that. And you can either do training face to face, or you can complete that training online. If it would be deemed appropriate and there was an appetite for a counsellor session, a member session, I would be able to speak to our training provider Equation and arrange a session to be to be delivered internally in the council. But that would be obviously at the request of members.
Thank you.
Are we done on this topic? Oh, sorry, Dawn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually going to say that as well myself. I think that training for members is really an essential thing, really, because it's something that we as members may come across in our day-to-day work within our own communities. And also just the knowledge of those helplines is so helpful. So to get that across to all members to put in their portfolio of what to do if somebody comes to me with this problem, at least be able to have somewhere where we can signpost them to, it'd be really, really useful. So very much welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we done with questions on this topic, because we have thriving communities to go to? Lovely. So if we can take a show of hands. I'm sorry. I'm just ignoring you, Martin.
Yeah, just ignore me. I ignore myself. No, anyway, I'll kind of go from the end. I think that was really good. So I think in addition to what's in the report, that we look to get a member training session carried out on domestic abuse still, and we'll be able to attend. Just know that the online training is detailed in paragraph 22 of the report with a link on there, and the helplines are in paragraph 23. And then there's been a lot of discussion about performance and what success will look like. So I think it's useful that if you bring back a progress report, and Councillor Wilmot, we generally say you bring those back a year after it's been put into place, because that gives time for everything to kind of like bed in and be able to track the impact it's making. If you bring it back before, you can't really see what's been happening so clearly, and make sure and we'll make sure that report includes the action plan that's being developed, so the members can see how the strategy is performing against those actions. You can now
Okay.
Sorry.
We'd like to take a show of hands on those recommendations, please. Agenda item 6. Progress in the set-up and delivery of a corporate transformation programme for thriving communities. I would like to ask Councillor Dawn Justice, Cabinet Member for Communities and Public Health, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this report summarises how the Council is developing integrated neighbourhood working, or how we wrap services around communities to support their health and well-being. This programme is called Thriving Communities and is a corporate transformation programme to improve how we work with communities, the voluntary and community sector and our NHS partners. There's a great deal of change in the health and wellbeing system at the moment, and there is renewed focus on integrated neighbourhood working. The Health and Wellbeing Board, alongside the Public Health and Communities Division, will link the NHS's Neighbourhood Working Programme to the Council's Thriving Communities Programme. This will support communities now, will deliver aspects of the Council plan and prepare us for local government reform. Some examples of our activities so far are as follows. We are creating a map of all council funding and community-based roles and the impact and outcomes of this work. We are updating our community directory to be a one-stop shop for finding help and support in the community, and this work is nearing completion. We are aligning the new council plan with the Thriving Communities programme to ensure that the Thriving Communities programme responds to the aims and priorities of the council plan. We are reviewing adult social care data to understand how people can be supported earlier to prevent health and wellbeing issues. We would like to make the following recommendations, which are in the report: that the Overview Select Committee notes and comments on the programme of work and notes and comments on the integrated neighbourhood public services approach to support improved outcomes for residents. And another recommendation being that in order to support the work being carried out in the development of the Thriving Communities programme and the work involved in the integrated neighbourhood public services approach, we would recommend that the Overview Committee carries out a series of short and targeted reviews to examine specific areas of activity throughout the period of its development. And I will now hand over to Tom, who is the Deputy Director of Public Health and Communities, to take us through the report. Thank you.
Hi there. So I'm just going to run through a bit more of the detail about this programme. So as it says in the title, it's a corporate transformation programme. It's one of the big 3 programmes we're doing as a county council. And this is really, almost everyone involved, this is quite an exciting bit of work that we're all involved in. So at the moment, it's about 7 months old. So we're just bringing an update now of some of the ambitions and the scope that we are developing through the programme board, and how and we're working out how we link this, as Councillor Justice mentioned, around the NHS is doing more integrated neighbourhood working, so getting closer to people, that shift to the NHS 10-year plan, and we've got the new council plan. And then we've got local government reorganisation. So this Thriving Communities programme is almost, as a council, how we respond to those changes. So the council plan identifies rooted in communities and thriving together as one of the outcomes, and that's how we support our communities to be resilient, live healthier, happier lives, and that's the why of Thriving Communities. And that's what, when the council plan came out, that's exactly what we were trying to achieve through the programme. At the moment, we are, say this is 7 months old, it's shaping up at the moment. One of the early ways of describing the programme was through an umbrella, and you'll see the infographic in a second. This is, as I said, a corporate transformation programme. This is cross-council, and this is us all working together, which again is a really positive space to be in. And the umbrella is, if we're trying to describe Thriving Communities rapidly, it is how we put an umbrella over our communities. What can we do to support those communities? And there are three sections, and I'll go through each of them in a bit more detail. So proactive prevention, asset-based community development, and place-based approaches. In the infographic, that's some of the interventions that we're already doing as a council or as a health system, and things that we can develop. So one of the early starting points is to look at how we work with our voluntary and community sector and our social enterprise sector. So mapping what funds have we got going in, what outcomes are we expecting, what communities are we supporting. So we did a workshop internally to look at that. That was incredibly useful for us to understand what sort of funder the county council is, what outcomes are we looking at, and what communities are we focusing on. As I said, this is internal at the moment. We're looking externally, so we're looking at the voluntary community sector. We're also looking at how we work with the NHS. So this links directly to the Health and Wellbeing Board, where the integrated neighbourhood public service agenda is being strategically held. So we've got where we're looking inwards, but also looking outwards. Just examples of some of the themes. So with the proactive prevention, we are already working with the integrated neighbourhood teams, which is the NHS way of wrapping around people rather than expecting people to sort of bounce around agencies. So we're already linked into that. We've got making every contact count, and that is our healthy conversations. So work if you're speaking to, you talk about domestic abuse. Actually, with your skills and the confidence, actually, if you're having that conversation to say, do you know what, there's some really good help out there. There's a line specifically for men, and having that making the contact count is all of us and all of our officers have lots of interactions with the public. We've got opportunities to support health and wellbeing messaging. Adult social care is really well involved and is again provides lots and lots of support for individuals. How are we coordinating that? Are we looking at that across the whole council? So we've had a really, really valuable workshop. And we'll be doing another workshop with children's social care, again, to really understand how we're wrapping around our communities. And the children's part, thriving communities, is going to be a really important part. So we are developing that at the moment. I mentioned community asset-based development. We are launching the Your Nots directory in April 2026, and that's with the City Council, and that's going to be the one-stop shop for where to find information. It's taken a huge amount of work, so that's going to be really, really useful for all of us, and we'll share that when it goes live. As I mentioned, we're looking at funding support from the community sector, the support we have to that sector, and with the place-based approaches, we're starting to look. I've mentioned the Health and Wellbeing Board. What's the governance of this? How are we linking in? How are we working alongside the NHS? What assets do we have in our communities? How are we using them? So you may have heard of One Public Estate. So we've got meeting rooms, we've got office space. How can we support communities to use those assets? So that's the three strands. Mentioned local government reorganisation. What Thriving Communities enables us to do is really understand our communities, but the services that we put in to support people. So when we know the boundaries, we can then work with the new authorities. And we've almost got we'll have a tried and tested approach. We'll have really good strategic understanding of our communities, of our funding, how we support people. So there's a few lines around the local government reorganisation implications. So as Councillor Justice mentioned, one of the asks is we'll do a time-limited subgroup, invite some of you, really just for us to bring our plans, our Thriving Communities plans, to get some of your feedback as voices of the communities. If you think actually there are communities here that aren't represented, you challenge back to us, because we want to make sure we've got the best wraparound for our communities through integrated neighbourhood public service. So that is Thriving Communities in a nutshell. We will come back and you will start to see more outputs. As I say, it's 7 months old at the moment, very, very exciting, but over the next few months, we're going to start to see some real tangible outputs from the programme. Okay. Thank you.
So, I was just checking when we're coming back, because obviously this is a new programme. It's all in the throes of getting started, and you've got to get to some point for us to judge where it's. Viv, thank you, save me.
Thank you. So as Tom has articulated, this is a new approach to how we're working with our communities in Nottinghamshire, and it builds on some of the work that you will have seen in the work that we've collectively and led by Lucy as well, in terms of linking into that broader portfolio of change, which we've talked about earlier on in the agenda. So this is really about how do we really embed that prevention and early help agenda, so that we've got interventions in the MTFS that talk about almost some immediate pressures, but this also helps us develop that longer term strategy. So how do we support communities to be resilient, to stay independent and healthy in their communities and their homes, which has really positive outcomes for their health and well-being, and broader economic outputs as well, but also helps to support the financial position of the council. So I think it's really important to think around how this is that cross-cutting approach that works alongside all of the other portfolio of change elements that we've talked about before. But it also leans into some of the aspirations that you will have seen in the local government reform bid. Really building on what Tom was talking around in terms of developing that integrated neighbourhood public service. And that is around how do we wrap around communities at a very hyper-local level in a different way to how we have done that before. And I think that's what we're really interested to get your advice, support and input into, because we absolutely acknowledge that we haven't got all of the responses. You will have relationships with your constituents and organisations within your patch in a way that we don't. And we're really keen to think around how do we move forward as we move into our new unitary landscape in the future, but start the work now. So really keen to hopefully engage you within that conversation. But if there are other things that you're interested in, you think that we've missed in terms of looking at the Thriving Communities portfolio of work, we acknowledge that we're going to have to flex and change as we work through that test, learn and grow approach. So in terms of coming back to this committee, we can have conversations with Martin in terms of how we would want to set up that particular subgroup, because we would anticipate there would be more detailed conversations that we would have with members that are interested, and then we would report back into overview on a regular basis. But Martin, I don't know, you can give some advice in terms of the timings and things of those.
Want to just briefly do that, and then
I think as if we look at recommendation 2, it's kind of like, no, this is really detailed. I think the idea behind the wording of this recommendation, so when there's an area of activity that members can feed into, that we can get like a small working group together, you can receive some information, you can have those opportunities to have those conversations with the officers involved, so they can listen to your input and then take it away, feed it in, and then ultimately, whenever, when we look at the work programme for next year, there might be an opportunity to bring something more like overarching, to kind of like have a broader look at where is this programme going. But for the actual getting this going, as Viv says, this is such a new way of doing stuff. It's important that members are engaged along the way rather than just having a how's it going kind of report. So we have regular conversations. Obviously, we have 6 over committee meetings a year. So myself and the chair are meeting with Viv regularly throughout the process of managing those meetings. So through those processes, we can have the conversations about what's coming up, when it will be appropriate, and then I will work with like Viv and Tom and colleagues to actually have those sessions so you can then start inputting into what this actually looks like in reality.
Thank you, Martin. So if I can remove the recommendations which are 67 of the agenda as read out by Dawn, thank you very much. And ask for a second. And then open the floor. Would anybody like to ask questions? Councillor Cox, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got 3 questions that sort of come to mind after conversations. And how in its implementation will the Thriving Communities Programme remove silo working, duplication and fragmented community-facing roles across the council and with the delivery partners? So that's the first one. I'm not going to put all 5 together or 3 together.
No, you're
not. Thank you. So just on that question, thank you. That's the piece of work we've been doing over the last few months. It's looking at those roles, looking at the job description, looking at the communities that they're working within. And as that mapping works, we did a really detailed piece of work with across the council to sit down and do that. So already we're starting to see, there are some duplications there. Actually, we could flex this differently and shape this differently. So that is probably one of the most exciting bits we've done so far, to really start to look at that. So that is an ongoing piece of work, and we're working with team members at the moment to develop that.
Councillor Rich.
Oh, there we go. So I've listened to what you said on a massive scale, and what came to my mind is, how would you approach to promote this sort of stuff? Because like ourselves, like councillors themselves, there's a lot of political opinions. A lot of people won't go out and talk to other political issues because of their opinions and stuff, so they might not even bother approach them, even though they may have personal issues behind them. My question is, how would, as a council, promote this to those type individuals who are like I say, a bit nervous, a bit scared of, you know, asking for the service and stuff that's gone on in the past.
Thank you, Councillor Rich. So question, it's just to clarify the question, is that around how are we working with people to have their local voice, improve their local voice, or support people into services?
It's just more for like advertising, like leafleting, posters, social media, just to get that information out basically, because there's a lot of services out there in Nottinghamshire. I can guarantee half the population don't even know, to be fair, which is kind of a shame, to be honest. You know, we can all group it all up, make it all sound happy-dappy, but the reality is we need to get as much information out as possible to reach out to a lot of people out of not just Nottingham, but into Nottinghamshire as well. That's what I'm more concerned about, really.
Great, thank you. And that's been part of the mapping work around what are the services that we offer, what are the services that communities need. So we're doing that, essentially that mapping to understand what offers we've got into the communities, how people can access them, and do we have any gaps? So I mentioned Councillor Cox's question around the team members. Are we really getting that feedback from our communities about what things are gaps, what services people need, and then making sure people are aware. So at the moment, colleagues are going to get you some leaflets around domestic abuse. Actually, corporately, as a council, how do we help residents to understand the services that are out there? Because there are so many amazing services that a lot of people don't know about. So one of the things we do with the thriving communities is making sure that, I mentioned the community directory, but actually getting better at getting information into communities and information that they want and need. So that's part of the sort of communications role that will be part of the thriving communities.
If I can add something, share the question. Really important question, and I think thank you for raising it. So building on what Tom touched on there, so there are specific projects within this programme that will help support some of that. So Tom's articulated the work that's being done around the new community directory. Having that across Nottingham and Nottinghamshire will also allow for residents that live on borders in terms of what opportunities are around them. But it will also be a resource to bring all those opportunities and interventions into one place for professionals as well. And that links into some of the work that you talked about there, Tom, in terms of the making every contact count. So we're doing a lot of work with our staff to support them to make every contact that they have with residents count in a different way. So that's utilising those very brief conversations that they can have to signpost or support individuals to go into services that they may not know about, be aware of, or be interested in. Because we know the evidence base can be around needing to hear things up to 7 times before you actually then want to do something. So there's specific work around that. There's also work in the broader corporate plan around being a council that listens. So there's a lot of work going on, and Lucy will be well versed in this in terms of how do we develop our approach to genuinely co-producing with our communities. And when we talk about this approach for thriving communities, it's about working differently with our communities. We really want to do that. So we really want to, first of all, identify what neighbourhoods are important to our people in Nottinghamshire, and then think about how we build on some of the hyperlocal work that's already going on to really understand and flex our approach, because we know some of the approaches that we will need to do in Mansfield and Ashfield are going to be very different to some of the approaches that we're going to need to do in Rushcliffe. But also there's differences within those patches. So we really want to get down to that level of detail and that level of co-production, and that links into some of the ambitions in the local government reform approach. But Lisa, I didn't know, did you want to add anything about broader corporate programmes or something like that?
Probably covered it enough. That's, yeah, just, I mean, there's a real strong commitment coming through the council plan to strengthen and build further our work. It's something that we've heard really strongly over the last 6 to 8 months, that desire to make sure that the way that we're working, not just make sure that we as an organisation, our partners, have the right services in place, but that communities know and understand they're in place and will be accessing them, because we know that certainly we hear quite a lot that there's a gap between the information that we put out and, you know, the people who want to hear it, hearing it. So, you know, a really small example of what we've done so far is in the new council plan. Following a discussion here, actually, I think, you know, making sure the language is plain English and that we're not using too much local authority speak, but equally the QR codes in the plan that link you directly into the support available. So we're thinking really hard about how to make every opportunity to connect people to support. And I think there's a really opportunity for us. So when the community services directory goes live, for example, in April, actually all members having a good understanding that resource is there and promoting it in the conversations that you have with your constituents and your communities. So I think it's that, which is an extension of that making every contact count principle. It's, you know, the idea that, you know, whatever your role is, you try and make use of all opportunities you have to connect with people and support them. Much more for us to do then.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Based on the early indicators, how would you expect the prevention model to reduce or delay demand for social care and prevent escalation into, for example, statutory services?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Clark. So one of the really early bits of work we've been doing is around looking at the data we have available and looking at predictive modelling. So can we use data to understand who we think might need help? So that's one of the things we're looking at is how you can do that. An example of Lincolnshire did that, where they looked at housing, they looked at medication, they looked at this data set, and actually you can work out people who will probably have a fall within the next year, and having a fall can lead to frailty. So that would be perhaps where we could get to. Another thing we're doing at the moment is looking at some of our waiting lists and people who are wanting to access care and what services are available at the moment that we can support people into that will delay that. So that's one of the early key drivers of this is to try and support people with the waiting well agenda. So we're looking after them before they need that statutory help, and they find the services within their community. The challenge back to that is, do we understand the communities enough? Do we know what's in the communities that will support that individual to not escalate into statutory services?
Thank you.
Councillor
Thank you, Chair. With regard to promoting or advertising thriving communities, myself and council colleague are due to start surgery soon in Mansfield North area. Do you think it would be a good idea for us to either have some literature to hand out to residents at those surgeries, or even better, perhaps some of your team attend one of the surgeries? We're going in venues what have PowerPoint presentation facilities, so perhaps give a short PowerPoint presentation to the residents about what you're actually doing, because I think that would really help the residents and also promote and advertise your really good project. Thank you.
So thank you for raising that, Councillor. I mean, I think what we're really keen to do is think around what's the best way to connect with our communities in a different way, and acknowledging that one approach that worked, that sounds like a really positive approach from Mansfield. We might need to flex and change that for different areas. But what we can do is, as we work through the task and finished group conversations, we can think around how do we make that bridge stronger between ourselves as the council and into our communities. And I think ideas like that would be really keen to understand and think, because this will help some of the immediate work of thriving communities in the first few years, but this is a slower burn project as well. So there's something around how does that build into some of our broader council ambitions, and I'd be keen to link in Lucy's team into some of that, so that again we're not duplicating, because some of the work that we have had that we've done when we've done some work around understanding communities is some communities are almost feeling engagement overload, whereas other communities are not feeling engaged at all. So there's something about how do we make sure that we're getting that right balance and flexing as we need to for those. So if it's okay, we will.
In surgery, you'll know you have got direct insight into the the needs, if you like, the kind of challenges that your residents are experiencing. So I guess we would be looking to make sure that we're therefore providing appropriate information that's specific to the needs of the residents and the communities that you're serving. So I think, as Viv says, as part of the test and finish, we'd be really keen to understand how we can strengthen the kind of opportunities that, you know, to connect with people that way. Thank you.
Councillor Cox.
I suppose one of the things that's sort of come to my mind across this whole project that we're now putting together is we need to be absolutely mindful that we're not duplicating workloads and cross-contaminating, not the right word, but from an adult social care point of view to the thriving communities, is that we don't spend the resources, because obviously budgetary constraints, budgetary issues. What we need to be mindful of and make sure that we do is that we minimise the cross-pollination, if you like, or the cross-working things, so we keep our costs under control here. It's important, because what we don't need to see is a spiralling cost issue with this, and yet we're duplicating work with the adult social side of things as well. So it's more of a statement rather than a question, is can we make sure that we keep a view on this and ensure that we don't start intermingling with different aspects of the council business, as it were. Thank you.
Was that your final one?
That's me.
Yeah.
So if I can respond, if that's okay. So I think as I think Tom described at the beginning, you know, the portfolio of change we have as an organisation tries to ensure we're taking a whole organisational approach to the, I guess, the challenges that our residents are experiencing, but also the things that we know are facing, cost pressures. So this programme sits alongside our programme that's directly focused on the statutory part of adult social care and health, as well as the programmes that are supporting children and families. So from a portfolio perspective, we deliberately look at those things as a whole in order to avoid exactly that. So what we're really trying to make sure is the work that this programme does is work with adult social care to understand what do we know about the needs of people who are receiving adult social care and support. So actually, if we were to provide that support in communities in a different way, actually might be able to meet need better and avoid some of those adults going on to require care and support. Yeah. So we are absolutely committed to kind of joining it up and making sure that from a budget perspective, we're really clear, you know, what works in different parts of the portfolio in both kind of portfolio holders, but also from a programme delivery perspective.
Perfect. Thank you. Just, I did make a note on something that, Tom, you brought up about the website for the City Council thing. And I've just checked our website, and we have quite a good website in relation to support mechanisms that are out there for us. So again, it all boils down to this duplication of workload, if you like, and just making sure that we're not creating a new website that then someone can go, well, why can't I go to the county council website or go to the city council website when we've both got the same idea. So it's just about making sure we don't have that duplication. Thank you.
Super duper. I have one question from, again, the offside guideline. It's okay, you lot all joining up together. You lot. Well, you know, your individual departments if you want to be posh, but you lot, being officers and all your departments joining up together, we should as well. And where Thriving Communities runs through everything, we should, I think, not have it as a topic every time, is have it in the back of his mind every time. So it's like when we do the portfolio for what we own and don't own, we think about what do you need, in what area can we assist, as an ongoing mind thought, if you like, not as a individual specific item. But if we kept it all in mind, then we would be making every contact count from this side of the table to keep up with you lot over there.
Yeah, I think really in the recommendations for the first part of your question, that sort of the second recommendation does answer that, because nobody knows our communities like we do. So if we can, and this is why this is a recommendation really, so if we can ask members of this committee, and we will represent very diverse communities within Nottinghamshire, to come forward and work through what your communities need, and we'll get a wider picture and a deeper picture across Nottinghamshire, just with a selection of people from this committee. So that sort of tells you the first part of your question. I don't know if anyone, if you want to next. So.
Thank you, Councillor Justice. So just to build on that, I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Mason, in terms of this is a new way of thinking, and this is very much the ambition we've talked about from where we would like to go, particularly when we have the opportunities of LGR. And I think you will hear us, as we mentioned in some of the discussions around the domestic abuse strategy, the discussions in the broader budget discussion around how do we have that much more hyper-local approach. So how do we flex what we're doing to the individual needs of our populations in maybe a little bit more of a way than we've done before. And I think, and that actually will really help us reduce health inequalities as well, because what you're doing then is you're flexing what we're delivering on the level of needs. And I just think this is a more granular way to do that, which is building much more of an approach with our communities, which I think is a really positive approach. But we're very happy to support any further conversations that colleagues may like to have to do that. But I think it's something that you will see as a theme through the strategic plan, through the portfolio of change, but also through those broader ambitions of LGR. So I think you'll start hearing some of that language. And if you're not hearing that language, then please do ask those questions about us so that we make sure that we're articulating how we do that. And then the final link will be the work into the Health and Wellbeing Board, which will be that sub-broader system approach, acknowledging that we are an important partner within Nottinghamshire, but actually to have the really best outcomes for our communities, we need to be working with those partners in a much more broader way, so that we're meeting all of their needs very holistically.
Councillor Justice. I think as well, part of your question there was perhaps about council assets and
anything.
Just to say that obviously in Cabinet as well, we're looking at broader issues, and there's one example, and there are other examples where we're looking at assets which may be for disposal within the council, and we're examining amongst ourselves carefully whether those assets can also be used as a community asset prior to any such disposal. So that's quite an important issue as well, but that is taken up amongst Cabinet members very much so at the moment. So that is working.
Is there any more questions on this topic? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to speak. From what's been discussed already, but I just wondered, are the needs of all our vulnerable groups and the underserved communities and the rural and remote communities fully factored in and consistent with the council's plans, for the ambition for a fairer Nottinghamshire? Because we have to remember 30% of the community don't have a computer, and it's a really serious situation. From that, is digital exclusion being addressed, especially in relationship to the new directory platform and community information access? It's a serious situation that does need to be addressed. How you do it, we've got to find out.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. So you've actually described one of our ambitions is we get a better view of our communities, because we've got defined communities, we've got communities that might be spread out and maybe linked via interest groups or shared identities. So what are the challenges that we have as a county council is really understanding our community better. And when we developed the local government reorganisation bids, that was really key about, Liz mentioned, a hyperlocal working. It's really having that granular understanding of, within my community, we have a group of settled English travellers, and actually that's a group who have really, really high health needs. So how are we working with that really defined community? So that's part of the working group is is for us to get that insight from you around those defined communities, because that again is going to really support us going to local government reorganisation of the new boundaries, because we will have a much better understanding of our communities. And the digital exclusion point, that is, I've mentioned the community directory just because that's one of the earlier outputs, but digital exclusion is something that we are, is an underlying theme that we look at through when we're looking at our information that we're putting out, because that is a challenge for us as a local authority, and it's also something that, especially when we're working with our health and wellbeing partners, is having that understanding. So again, if digital exclusion is something that's coming from you, that gives us another challenge to improve how we work as a council.
My final question is, how will the impact of the Thriving Communities transformation programme be measured to see how it is improving resilience, independence, reduced escalation, and into formal care, and delivering the greater community capacity across Nottinghamshire? Just wondered how you're going to measure it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, really important question, Councillor Wilmot, because we absolutely need to demonstrate the impacts that we're having. And I think there will be a number of ways that we will need to demonstrate the impact, because again, it's quite a complex project that we've got here. So one of the key ways will be around the local government outcomes framework, and that links into some of the public health outcomes framework. So you will have seen, I think it was in November, that we brought the really long list of public health outcomes, and they are our baseline in terms of, from a public health point of view, where does Nottinghamshire fit in terms of when we're comparing to the England average and our statistical neighbours. So that will be one thing from a sort of number crunching point of view. But we will also lean into the conversations that we've had earlier about how do we as a council listen more, and then we will need to consider about how we're engaging with our communities and how does it look and feel differently for them. So I think that's a broader piece of work that we'll be doing that will link into the broader ambitions around the council plan that we will link into. But there will also be things in terms of evaluation of services. So it will be a bit of a mixed evaluation approach. But we've got really good data in terms of what our baseline is now from an outcomes point of view. We have also done a lot of work from the LGR bid in terms of looking at broader outcomes. So where are we in terms of our number of adult social care support? Where are we in terms of what the feedback is for carers around their health and wellbeing, things like that. So we can look at where we were then and then think around how we build that into the evaluation approach of thriving communities.
Is it Councillor Brown?
Yeah, just moving on from Councillor Wilmot, I think this internet lack of 30%, you said, is a thread that runs through all the councils, advertising or whatever you want to call it. And I think we should, and 9 times out of 10, I think it is the most vulnerable that it does affect as well. So I haven't come across or heard of any other way we're going to get these services out there. I think one way is possibly local radio, because it doesn't cost a lot, and then having like a stall in city centre market or whatever, where officers can go and give out leaflets or advice or whatever. I just think we should be looking at other ways of getting this out there. Thank you.
Councillor Justice.
I'm not saying that this is the absolute only answer to it, but I think one thing we do have in Nottinghamshire as a very good asset is our community of libraries and library networks. And obviously there are opportunities to get the news out through that. And I do know that the libraries offer They have courses to help people to become more computer literate. People who maybe are a bit scared about using computers have the opportunity to go to the library space and use a computer there. So there are some ways of reaching into communities to try and alleviate the problem that computer literacy and the use of a computer is a barrier to people engaging with programmes and engaging with the council. But I'm not saying that's the whole answer to it, but that's something we need to see as a strength and to carry on investing in.
Thank you.
Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Councillor Justice and Councillor Brown, what I've actually started doing in Mansfield North is when there's road closures, for example, I've been printing out copies and been placing them in supermarkets and local shops. I think for the residents who don't actually go online, which is typically the older generation, and then if they're going to at some stage go to the local supermarket or local shops, I put it on their notice board. So when there's important road closures, that's an easy way of making sure everyone's informed. I also upload stuff onto the internet as well, so it covers all options then of advertising it to people. And it's been really successful because people have gone to the supermarket, even the supermarkets like us doing it, because then their delivery drivers are also aware when there's road closures, etc. So that's a good way of doing it as well, to place physical copies of road closures, etc., or information in a supermarket, or like Councillor Justice said, a library or somewhere where people are going to go. Thank
you. Anybody else, please? No. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. It's following on. But over the time being in office, I've met some really wonderful community groups, such as, for an example, the ladies section in Ollerton, where periodically a group of ladies, just using this as an example, will meet up, and it's a community forum, and many of them wouldn't see anybody if they weren't in that group. And there's many different groups like that across the county. Men's groups, ladies groups, mixed groups, church groups, and there might be a way of reaching out and liaising via those groups to reach some of those people. Thank you.
If I can just butt in, so we're not here till Christmas, because we could be. If I could recommend to put down that the 30% that is not internet available be one of the first topics for our first subgroup in how to deliver, because obviously delivering information to people is a priority, otherwise you can't get any stats, etc., etc. So if everybody would be happy with that. I'm not seeing any no's. Good. Now, is there any more, or are we getting to the point of closing the meeting? Councillor Chowdhury, last one there.
Yeah. Sorry for delaying. Just looking at the report from Nottinghamshire County Council to the overview committee. The report shows thriving community, NHS local government, new council plan, 7 months old, you said. Just a question on that. Since taking this program, have you ever delivered this service to the public? How far are you, and what is the confidence you tackled the 10 years plan? So how would you ensure the Nottinghamshire public that service will be delivered? Thank you.
Thank you. So, Viv has mentioned earlier, this is a new way of us working as a council. That's not to say that the work underneath this is not something we're experienced in. The exciting bit is we're coordinating it, we're bringing everything together. I've met more with adult social care in the last week than I've done in my 3 years in my previous role in another authority. We're really bringing that together. Things like asset-based community development, that's quite a well-defined intervention. We've got senior officers with experience within that. Proactive prevention, again, we've got data analysts and we've got adult social care workers who, again, are experienced with that. And the place-based approaches, again, we've got senior officers with experience of that. So we've got some really, really strong officer leads who will be delivering these. So while it's a new web that's coming together, almost a new lens for us all to use, a lot of the work, the interventions underneath are quite well established and evidence-based. So we've got, we can show delivery to those, as we mentioned earlier, the outcomes.
If everybody is happy with that, I will ask Martin to summate for his time today.
Final slide today, but I don't know. Yeah, nothing further to add other than just what was agreed at the end about the topic for the first kind of like member, kind of like briefing / task and finish review. So we'll work with Tom and Viv and we'll work out when that will be the most suitable time to carry that out.
If I'd like to take a show of hands, please, on those recommendations. Super. Agenda item 7 is work programmes. This item will be introduced by Martin.
I'll be super brief. So just to know what we've got coming up at the next meeting. So we've got artificial intelligence, AI, but in advance of that, we will be doing a briefing, well, not me personally, but we will be doing a briefing on actually what AI is, so you can get an understanding of the technicalities of it. So during the meeting, you can actually be discussing how the council is actually using it rather than what it is. Because it is complicated, and we did it before it. By the time I got to committee, I think I understood it after hearing it like 3 times. As noted earlier, we'll also have to review on the Cabinet Working Group on Financial Management and Procurement. There'll be a progress report on the Blue Badge review that we did over a year ago. And also, we'll be having the draft annual delivery plan coming to that meeting, which is the plan that supports the delivery of the council plan. And that will be added to the work programme. And then just nipping forward, a couple of things that are happening. Myself and the chair and vice chair are meeting with Viv and Hannah Joan in HR next week to discuss the potential development of a menopause policy, which the chair's mentioned quite a few times. And then later on, I think this is going to be more in February or March, there'll be a session for members to learn all about the new Crisis and Resilience Fund, which is kind of like it's not like the Household Support Fund, it's in a similar vein, but it's not exactly the same. So this session will give members an opportunity to learn about it and to discuss how the council will be putting it into action. And as always, if there's anything you'd like us to consider looking at, just email myself and the chair.
Councillor Wilmot.
Yeah, thank you. I just thought we need to get some information about it and find out what we're going to do about these new parking regulations to come from the government. And as this authority is actually responsible for that area, I just wondered where we're going to go on that.
I think it's under place, Councillor Wilmot.
It's
under place.
Place, it's a place where.
What we all noted.
Yeah, but
it's going under place scrutiny.
Yeah, but it needs to come to it. Surely we'll be able to just to discuss it.
Not to overview, to place select.
But when will that be? Any idea, please?
Next meeting's in March. I'll have to discuss that with Councillor Brown as the chair and with officers as well to see where we might be able to do it. But we've got very full meetings, so we'll have to have a think about it. But we will discuss it and you suggest it, so thank you for suggesting it.
Because my residents are saying, well, what regulation? The regulations have been approved. When are you going to instill on them in the community? I said, I don't know.
None of us do, John.
Is there any other things to add to the work programme? No. So,
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, just to agree to the changes then that it's going to place, and we'll, yeah, lovely.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Close the meeting.